Hey guys, welcome back to next part of the series where I go over defining what are threats, vulnerabilities, and exploits. So getting started, we're gonna go over some terminology. First, a threat is any potential danger to an asset. So if a vulnerability exists but has not been exploited, or more importantly, it is not yet publicly known, the threat is latent and not realized. If someone is actively launching an attack against your system and successfully assesses something or compromises your security against an asset, the threat is realized. The entity that takes advantage of the vulnerability is known as the malicious actor, and the path used by this actor to perform the attack is known as the threat agent or threat vector. A vulnerability is a weakness in the system design, implementation, software, or code, or the lack of a mechanism. A specific vulnerability might manifest as anything from a weakness in system design to the implementation of an operational procedure. The correct implementation of safeguards and security countermeasures could mitigate a vulnerability and reduce the risk of exploitation. Vulnerabilities can be found in applications, operating systems, hardware, misconfiguration, and lastly, shrink wrap software. An exploit refers to a piece of software, a tool, a technique, or process that takes advantage of a vulnerability that leads to access, privilege, escalation, loss of integrity, or denial of service on a computer system. Exploits are dangerous because all software have vulnerabilities. Hackers and perpetrators know that there are vulnerabilities and seek to take advantage of them. Although most organizations attempt to find and fix vulnerabilities, some organizations lack sufficient funds for securing their networks. Sometimes no one may even know the vulnerability exists and it is exploited. That is known as zero-day exploit. Even when you do know there is a problem, you are burdened with the fact that a window exists between a vulnerability is disclosed and when a patch is available to prevent the exploit. The more critical the server, the slower it is usually patched. Management might be afraid of interrupting the server or afraid that the patch might affect stability or performance. Finally, the time required to deploy and install a software patch on production servers and workstations exposes an organization's IT infrastructure to an additional period of risk. As with any new technology topic, to better understand the security field, you must learn the terminology that is used. To be a security professional, you need to understand the relationship between risk, threats, assets, and vulnerabilities. Risk is the probability or likelihood of the occurrence or realization of a threat. There are three basic elements of risk: assets, threats, and vulnerabilities. To deal with risk, the U.S. federal government has adopted a risk management framework. The risk management framework process is based on the key concepts of mission and risk based, cost effective, and enterprise information system security. NIST Special Publication 837 Guide for Applying the Risk Management Framework to Federal Information Systems transforms the traditional certification and accreditation process into the 6-step risk management framework. An asset in any item of economic value owned by an individual or corporation assets can be real, such as routers, servers, hard drives, and laptops. Or assets can be virtual, such as formulas, databases, spreadsheets, trade secrets, and processing times. Regardless of the type of asset discussed, if the asset is lost, damaged, or compromised, there can be an economic cost to the organization. A threat sets the stage for risk and is any agent, condition, or circumstance that could potentially cause harm, loss, or damage or compromise an IT asset or data asset. From a security professional perspective, threats can be categorized as events that can affect the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the organization's assets. These threats can result in destruction, disclosure, modification, corruption of data, or denial of service. Types of threats an organization can face include national disaster, weather, and catastrophic damage, hacker attacks, cyber attacks, virus, malware, disclosure of confidential information, denial of service or distributor denial of service attack. So yeah, there's many types of risks that could happen. So threat actors are the individuals or a group of individuals who perform an attack or are responsible for a security incident that impacts or has the potential of impacting an organization or individual. There are several types of threat actors: script kiddies, people who use existing scripts or tools to hack into computers and network, organized crime groups whose main purpose is to steal information, scam people, and make money. They're state sponsored and governments. These agents are interested in stealing data, including IP and research and development data from major manufacturers, government agencies, and defense contractors. There are hacktivists who carry out cybersecurity attacks aimed at promoting a social or political cause. And then there are terrorist groups. These groups are motivated by political or religious beliefs. So, a hacker motives and intentions vary. Some hackers are strictly legitimate, whereas others routinely break the law. So, with white hat hackers, these individuals perform ethical hacking to help secure companies and organizations. Their belief is that you must examine your network in the same manner as criminal hackers to better understand its vulnerabilities. There are black hat hackers. These individuals perform illegal activities such as organized crime. Gray hat hackers. These individuals usually follow the law, but sometimes venture over to the darker side of black hat hacking. It would be unethical to employ these individuals to perform security duties for your organization because you are never quite clear where they stand. So, understanding what threat intelligence is important as well. Threat intelligence is referred to as the knowledge about an existing or emerging threat to assets, including networks and systems. Threat intelligence includes context, mechanisms, indicator of compromise, implications, and actionable advice. Threat intelligence is referred to as the information about the observables, indicators of compromise, intent, and capabilities of internal and external threat actors and their attacks. Threat intelligence includes specifics on the tactics, techniques, and procedures of these adversaries. Threat intelligence primary purpose is to inform business decisions regarding the risk and implications associated with threats. Converting these definitions into common language and could translate to threat intelligence being evidence-based knowledge of the capabilities of internal and external threat actors. This type of data can be beneficial for the security operations center of your organization. Threat intelligence extends cybersecurity awareness beyond the internal network by consuming intelligence from other sources internet-wide related to possible threats to you or your organization. For instance, you could learn about threats that have impacted different external or organizations. Subsequently, you can proactively prepare rather than react once the threat is seen against your network. Providing an enrichment data feed is one service that threat intelligence platforms would typically provide. A number of standards are being developed for disseminating threat intelligence information. There is structured threat information expression (STIC), an express language designed for sharing of cyber attack information. STIC details can contain data such as the IP address or domain name of command and control servers, malware hashes, and so on. There is trusted automated exchange of indicator information, TAXI, an open transport mechanism that standardizes the automated exchange of cyber threat information. There is cyber observable expression, CyberOx, a free standardized schema for specification, capture, characterization, and communication of events of stateful properties that are observable in the operational domain. Open Indicator of Compromise, Open IOC, an open framework for sharing threat intelligence in a machine digestible format. And then lastly, we have Open Command and Control, OpenC2. A language for the command and control of cyber defense technologies. OpenC2 Forum was a community of cybersecurity stakeholders that was facilitated by the U.S. National Security Agency. So, viruses and worms. One thing that makes viruses unique is that a virus typically needs a host program or file to infect. Viruses require some type of human interaction. A worm can travel from system to system without human interaction. When a worm executes, it can replicate again and infect even more systems. Spyware is closely related to viruses and worms. Spyware is considered another type of malicious software. In many ways, spyware is similar to a Trojan because most users don't know that the program has been installed. Spyware steals information from the users and also eats up bandwidth. If that's not enough, spyware can also redirect your web traffic and flood you with annoying pop-ups. So, although viruses have a history that dates back to 1980s, their means of infection have changed over the years. Viruses depend on people to spread them. Viruses require human activity such as booting a computer, executing an auto run on digital media, or so on. Malware propagates through the computer world in several basic ways, such as master boot record infection, BIOS infection, file infection, micro, macro infection, cluster, this is a type of virus that can modify directory tables entries so that it points a user or system process to the malware and not the actual program. Or you can do a multi-partite. This style of virus can use more than one propagation method and targets both the boot sector and program files. Yeah, so malware must place their payload somewhere. They can always overwrite a portion of the infected file, but to do so without destroy it. Most malware writers want to avoid detection for as long as possible and might not have written the program to immediately destroy files. One way the malware writer can accomplish this is to place the malware code either at the beginning or at the end of the infected file. Malware known as a prepender infects programs by placing its viral code at the beginning of the infected file, whereas an appender places its code at the end of the infected file. Both techniques leave the file intact while the malicious code added to the beginning or the end of the file. No matter the infection technique, all viruses have some basic common components as detailed. So there's a search routine responsible for locating new files, disk space, or RAM to infect. The search routine could include profiling, which is used to identify the environment and morph the malware to be effective and potentially bypass detection. There is an infection routine. The search routine is useless if the virus doesn't have a way to take advantage of these findings. Therefore, the second component of the virus is the infection routine. This portion of the virus is responsible for copying the virus and attaching it to a suitable host. Malware could also use a reinfect restart routine to further compromise the affected system. Payload. Most viruses don't stop here and also contain a payload. The purpose of payload routine might be to erase the hard drive, display a message to the monitor, or possibly just send the virus to 50 people in the address book. Payloads are not required, and without one, many people might never know the virus ever existed. There is an anti-detection routine. So many viruses might also have an anti-detection routine. Its goal is to help make the virus more stealth-like and avoid detection. And lastly, there is a trigger routine. The goal of the trigger routine is to launch the payload at a given date and time. The trigger can be set to perform a given action at given time. Okay, next we're gonna go into Trojans. Trojans are programs that pretend to do one thing, but when loaded, actually perform another, more malicious act. So Trojans gain their name from Homer's epic tale, the Iliad. To defeat the enemy, the Greeks built a giant wooden horse with a trapdoor in its belly. The Greeks tricked the Trojans into bringing the large wooden horse into the fortified city of Troy. However, unknown to the Trojans and under cover of darkness, the Greeks crawled out of the wooden horse and opened the city's gate and allowed the waiting soldiers into the city. So a software Trojan is based off the same concept. A user might think that a file looks harmless and is safe to run, but after the file is executed, it delivers malicious payload. So a few categories are command shell Trojans, GUI Trojans, HTTPS Trojans, document Trojans, defacement Trojans, botnet Trojans, and way more. There's plenty of Trojans out there. In reality, it's hard to place some Trojans into a single type because many have more than one function. So there are remote access Trojans, data hiding Trojans, e-baking Trojans, denial of service Trojans, proxy Trojans, FTP, and security software disablers. So not all Trojans were designed for the same purpose. Some are destructive and can destroy computer systems, whereas others seek only to steal specific pieces of information. Although not all of them make their presence known, Trojans still are dangerous because they represent a loss of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So common targets of Trojans include credit card data, electric or digital wallets, passwords, insider information, data storage, and advanced persistent threat. It could be that the hacker has targeted you as part of a non-native, of a nation-state attack, or your company has been targeted because of its sensitive data. So the mechanisms used for infection could be peer-to-peer networks, instant messaging, internet relay chats, email attachments, physical access, browser and browser extension vulnerabilities, SMS messages, impersonated mobile apps, watering holes, which is the idea is to infect the website the attacker knows the victim will visit. Then the attacker simply waits for the victim to visit the watering hole site so the system can become infected. And lastly, there's freeware. So nothing in life is really free. And so I guess that usually allows people to download some Trojan software. The effects of Trojan can range from benign to the extreme. So it really does depend on the software that the hacker has created. Distributing malware, technology changes, and that includes malware distribution. The fact that malware detection is much more difficult today than it is in the past Today, it is not uncommon for attackers to use multiple layers of techniques to obfuscate code, make malicious code undetectable from antivirus, and employ encryption to prevent others from examining malware. The result is that modern um, yeah, I'll move on. The result is that modern malware improves an attacker's chances of compromising a computer without being detected. These techniques include wrappers, packers, droppers, and encryptors. A wrapper is a program used to combine two or more executables into a single packed program. Wrappers are also referred to as binders, packagers, and exe binders because they are functional equivalent of binders for Windows portable executable files. Packers are similar to programs such as WinZip, RAR, and TAR because they compress files. However, whereas compression programs compress files to save space, packers do this to obfuscate the activity of the malware. The idea is to prevent anyone from viewing the malware's code until it is placed in memory. Droppers are software designed to install malware payload on the victim's system. Droppers try to avoid detection and evade security controls by using several methods to spread and install the malware payload. Cryptors function to encrypt or obscure the code. Some cryptors obscure the content of the Trojan by applying an encryption algorithm. Cryptors can use anything from AES, RSA, to even blowfish, or might even more basic obfuscation techniques such as XOR, base64 coding, or ROT13. These techniques are just used to conceal the contents of the executable program, making it undetectable by antivirus and resistant to reverse engineering efforts. So, ransomware has been used by criminals making money out of their victims, and by hacktivists and nation state actors causing disruption. Ransomware can propagate like a worm or a virus, but it's designed to encrypt personal files on the victim's hard drive until a ransom is paid to the attacker. Ransomware has been found for many years, but made a comeback in the recent years. There are many popular ransomwares out there. I would recommend to look over a couple. Distributing malware is just half the battle for the attacker. The attacker will need to have some way to exfiltrate data and to do so in a way that is not detected. If you look at the history of covert communication, you will see that the Trusted Computer System Evaluation Criteria, TCSEC, was one of the first documents to fully examine the concept of covert communication and attacks. So, TCSEC divides covert channel attacks into two broad categories. There are covert timing channel attacks, and then there's covert storage channel attacks. Timing attacks are difficult to detect because they are based on system time and function by altering a component or by modifying resource timing. And then storage channel attacks use one process to write data to a storage area and another process to read the data. So keystroke loggers or keyloggers are software or hardware devices used to record everything a person types. Some of these programs can record every time a mouse is clicked, a website is visited, and a program is opened. Although not truly a covert communication tool, these devices do enable hackers to covertly monitor everything a user does. Some of these devices secretly email all the amassed information to a predefined email address set up by the hacker. Spyware is another form of malicious code that is similar to a Trojan. It is installed without your consent or knowledge, hidden from view, monitors your computer and internet usage, and is configured to run in the background each time the computer starts. Spyware has grown to be a big problem. It is usually used for one of the two purposes: surveillance or advertising. Many spyware sites and vendors use droppers to covertly drop their spyware components to a victim's computer. Basically, a dropper is just another name for a wrapper because a dropper is a standalone program that drops different types of standalone malware to a system. Malware analysis can be extremely complex. So there are two basic methods to analyze viruses and other malware. So there's static and dynamic analysis. Static analysis is concerned with the decompiling, reverse engineering, and analysis of malicious software. The field is an outgrowth of the field of computer virus research and malware intent determination. Static analysis makes use of dissemblers and decompilers to format the data into human readable format. Some tools that would be useful for this type of analysis would be IDA Pro, Evans Debugger, BinText, UPX, OllyDBG, and Gidra. Dynamic analysis of malware and viruses is the second method that may be used. Dynamic analysis relates to the monitoring and analysis of computer activity and network traffic. This requires the ability to configure the network device for monitoring, look for unusual or suspicious activity, and try not to alert attackers. This approach requires the preparation of a testbed before you begin setting up a dynamic analysis lab. Remember that the number one goal is to keep the malware contained. If you allow the host system to become compromised, you have defeated the entire purpose of the exercise. Virtual systems share many resources with the host system and can quickly become compromised. If the configuration is not handled correctly, here are a few pointers to preventing malware from escaping the isolated environment to which it should be configured. You can install a VM, install a guest operating system on the VM, isolate the system from the guest VM, verify that all sharing and transfer of data is blocked between the host operating system and the virtual system, and lastly, copy the malware over to the guest operating system and prepare for analysis. So yeah, that is the end of this part, this episode. And yeah, the next section I will be going over is the common software and hardware vulnerabilities. So if you have any questions over these, I probably will break this up into two parts. If not, then you will know. But if you have any questions over these two videos or just one video, then please feel free to leave a comment. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for future videos. And I will see y'all in the next episode. Thank you guys. Have a great day.